to introduce Dr. John Lumkes, our speaker today. John is a professor in ag and biological engineering, works with fluid power and ag mechanization. And I'm not quite sure where I first met John, but I got involved. We met. We were both in a number of meetings related to our projects in Africa, and where I think we really got to know each other was in Eldoret, Kenya, a few years ago. And John is doing some really interesting work with students on some projects in Africa. And it's a really neat story of engaging students and stakeholders on the ground. And so I'll let John take it from here so he can.
Get this on here real quick so I can move around. Okay, let's try that. So I'm going to start off. So thank you for having me, by the way. And it was fun to hear all the little different background things and the dollars. And thank you for letting me share that a little bit today. That should, once it's in there safe, hopefully it doesn't vibrate too much. So I met Darrell my very first trip to Eldoret. We've been in Africa before, and he sent me up there. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my journey. I don't have a lot of time, so it's going to be condensed. I'll be happy to answer any questions afterwards. Anyone here is affiliated with risk management at Purdue? Okay, because I have to be careful what stories I tell otherwise. So let me start with two short video clips. I'm going to catch one in the middle, and one's a little 3-minute introduction we just did for a business plan competition out in Berkeley. My team finished second out of 45, and that'll give you a little better feel of it, and then I'll just show you some pictures. So if you can't hear it, just stop me and I'll start narrating it. I'll turn
of sub-Saharan Africa, where rural transportation is a major challenge. In Cameroon, 92% of roadways are unpaved. With only 19 motor vehicles per 1,000 people, affordable motorized transportation is uncommon at best.
Field work is done mostly by hand. Water and crops are collected and transported manually. Processing of grains is usually by hand or with basic tools. The lack of rural power is a major factor in sub-Saharan Africa's notoriously low farm productivity.
Significant time and energy is spent on manual labor, often by women and children, to the neglect of education and additional income opportunities. High transportation costs can leave both the farmer and the consumer food insecure. Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Jeremy.
We believe it doesn't have to be this way.
We believe that we can make the technologies accessible to help lift people out of poverty.
We are a part of a student team at Purdue University that has developed, in partnership with an NGO in Cameroon, a multi-purpose vehicle that we call the Practical Utility Platform, or PUP for short.
The PUP is designed to carry 2,000 pounds in the bed, can be driven off-road and on-road, with speeds up to 20 miles per hour.
The engine easily powers attachments like pumps, corn grinders, and generators, and like a tractor, the PUP can pull small field implements such as planters and cultivators.
The design only requires parts available in Cameroon. The use of local materials and only basic manufacturing requirements keeps the vehicle cost under $2,000 US.
Both in the US and in Cameroon, the PUPs have been rigorously tested off-road with heavy loading and for endurance and pulling capabilities.
We are currently and we'll be using them very frequently. We are also renting it to the community that are using it to collect their harvest.
The next phase of the project is to scale up and to expand to other interested partners who have similar rural transportation and power needs.
Locally manufactured pumps can provide added value to rural delivery businesses, smallholder farmer cooperatives, entrepreneurs, NGOs, and municipalities all across sub-Saharan Africa.
You can help us move from prototype to production.
We can work together to provide Africa with affordable transportation and power.
Will you join us?
I have one other little clip, it's a little bit of overlap, but it shows more of the student side, which I know a lot of you in here will be interested in. And then I have plenty of pictures and stories to show. It's been quite a journey on my end too. I don't think it's going to like going that quickly. Maybe one thing in here quick. Let's see. Okay, if it doesn't work, we'll just go to the PowerPoint. I'm still thinking. Sometimes if I stop one video too, there it goes. Let me see if it does it this time. Switch to the student stuff here pretty quick with the students working in Cameroon. We're up in the mountain range. We're climbing up to about 6,000 feet, which is nice. It's a lot cooler and a lot less mosquitoes. Okay, well, I'm glad those work because, as they say, picture is worth a lot of words, and it's better to show that than me just talk the whole time. So I'm going to actually focus a little bit more on the student part. That was a little bit more on the project part. We've got a website up. But probably you're asking, like, how in the world did I ever get involved in this? And I wonder that too some days. I'm going to give you a really quick snapshot about how I ended up in Africa with all these students each year. This wasn't something I was ever trained to do. It wasn't something I expected to do. And in fact, the very first time I went to Africa, I didn't know what to expect. So what do you do if you don't know what to expect where you're going and you hear stories about Africa? You go to Walmart and you buy gauze and first aid and hydrogen peroxide and this and that, and you throw it out on the counter and the person looks at you and says, "What are you doing, going to Africa?" I said, "Well, matter of fact, I am." Mosquito netting and all this kind of stuff. And so that's where it started. So just a real quick snapshot, about 1 billion people go to bed hungry every day. Billion less than $1.25 a day. And the phrase sometimes I hear students is, "Well, it's a lot cheaper to live there." Well, it is, but you still try to live on $1.25 a day, and it's hard. And so it's a difficult place. It's also a lot of fun, which I want to show you. By 2030, more demand for food, more demand for energy. And I tell my students, I don't care what you're studying at Purdue. If you're a student, you're looking at a career in the next 50 years, these are some of the challenges that are also opportunities to get involved in. And that's really how they sell this. When they go to Africa and they see stuff, they typically come back more excited and invigorated about their career than they come back thinking, oh, it's a hopeless place and what we're working on. It's actually really exciting to see that. So Cameroon itself, you can see on here the gross domestic product for the world. So the U.S. would be significantly higher than the high line, and then Cameroon and the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. So relative to the world average, it's much lower, let alone if I put U.S. on there, it throws the whole scale off on there. So it's a challenging thing. 40% of the food can go to waste. That's one of the things our project deals with. 92% of the roads are unpaved. Very few motor vehicles. High cost. If you're only making a couple dollars a day, it's awfully hard to invest in a vehicle. So ag mechanization, Darrell mentioned, I got involved in that. I did grow up on a small farm in Wisconsin, but didn't think I'd ever come back to ag engineering at Purdue. But they called me one day and said, would you like to apply? I was in mechanical engineering. I said, sure. Came and visited, and it's been, the 10 years went really quick. You know, if you're at 10 years at Purdue, you get the little booklet where you get to pick out a gift. That's how I knew I got 10 years in, because it went so fast. When I made a mistake, I brought the booklet home, and the last I saw of it, the next thing you know, the kids ordered a dartboard from it. But I love my kids. Farm power in Africa, primarily human muscle power, hand tools, drought, and animal power. So that just kind of sets the stage. I'm really going to focus on a couple slides on how I got involved on there. So what's the opportunity with students? Students globally want to get involved. In other words, we have more demand for students than a lot of times there's faculty able to mentor the students or staff to do things at Purdue. Purdue's a challenging place. There's a lot of research and publishing demands, and sometimes it's hard to get involved in the students. The student demand is there. I mean, the students love to get involved in projects like these. And I think when you realize that, and that's why companies like John Deere and AGCO and Cummins are in places like that, the next frontier beyond China, a lot of people would say, are countries like Sub-Saharan Africa. It's a huge landmass. China, North America, all fit on the continent of Africa. Very little of it's irrigated or even farmland right now, so we're going to grow more food. So a lot of potential. It's a huge thing. So really the 10 or 15 minutes I have, I want to just talk about my journey, some quick lessons, some quick stories. You can see all the students in there. We like to mingle with the students and the village kids. They know when Purdue comes. My first trip there was in 2009, and the entire village, I think, came out to welcome us. And now we get to know all of them. Some of them were just kids, infants when we went there. And now they're 6, 7 years old, and vice versa they're up there. So we've been playing soccer with them. So it's the continuity. It's been a whole lot of fun to go through. From my first trip with throwing everything on the counter at Walmart and going there to now where I pack a whole lot lighter because there's not a lot that you can buy or do. So in 2009, I had 10 students. If you're from Purdue, you recognize some of them. Ag and Bioengineering, Ag Systems Management was a small group. But the really quick synopsis of the story, I know Darrell asked how I got involved in here. I had done a student project where we build these vehicles. There's a group out of Indianapolis, and they sold the vehicle to this NGO there. But by the time you buy a vehicle here for $6,000, import it, you got the shipping costs, and then Cameroon is typical of African countries. There's 50 to 100% import duty. So that same vehicle becomes a $12,000 vehicle by the time you get it in country. So we went over, they bought one, but they wanted some design changes. They went to the group in Indianapolis. They said, can you make some design changes? And they're like, we don't do custom design. However, there's a professor at Purdue that's been coming to our competition for a little while. Maybe he wants to get a group of seniors from Purdue to work on it. And I said, sure, why not? I'll work on the vehicle. About halfway through, we're doing these conference calls with our partner in Cameroon. And he's like, why don't you just come visit us in May and work on it with us? And that was my first time. I'm like, Africa, sounds interesting, let's go. And the first trip I went, came back with a notebook, and we've had a lot of different projects. I got a summary slide on the back. It started with the vehicle project. We just fixed the current vehicle. But I came back, and you can see we went from 10 students total and 4 traveled in the next year to 30 students, 20 students just on the vehicle project, and then 15 total traveled. So the numbers went up immediately. A lot of interest. And if you can see the picture a little bit, what is the lower left corner of the vehicle made out of? Wood. So that was our first attempt at a Purdue designed vehicle because it was really, really cheap. Wood was all over in that part of Africa. We had since found out that deforestation in other parts, they do not have a lot, so we changed the materials a little bit. But we went there, And we got one built. You can see the person sitting on there. I think they test drove it the night before they went. I think the vehicle might have made 3 weeks on the ground before it was retired. That was our first foray into building our own vehicle in Africa. A little more challenging than we had first anticipated with tools. But we came back, and you can look at the majors. There had a lot of different majors on there. And the next year we said, well, that was the team. Let's take a different approach. And so we designed a new vehicle, belts and pulleys, because if you saw the one picture in the video on the little storefronts, belts and pulleys are all over the place. So local materials, low cost, you can buy belts for a couple dollars. Let's design a vehicle using all local materials. And so we did that, and the vehicle on the right was the vehicle as a result of building that one in Cameroon. Okay, and I'll show a couple more slides and we'll come back to it. So that was 2011, not that long ago. We picked up a couple other majors again. It was under $1,800. All you needed was to cut, drill, and weld, some terminology. But what you'll notice on this slide, is that an actual picture of the vehicle on the right? No. That's all computer generated. The point being on here, and I tell our students, we actually are applying state-of-the-art engineering tools that they learn in their classes to something that's appropriate and can be manufactured and maintained in Africa. So just because it's low tech doesn't mean that it's not a lot of design work. So the way I tell my students, kind of my design philosophy, if it's not on the vehicle, so if we don't need a part on the vehicle, it doesn't weigh anything, it doesn't cost anything, and it never breaks. So don't put it on the vehicle unless we absolutely need it. But to do that, they need to run stress analysis on the entire vehicle and say, this member isn't carrying that much stress, can we redesign it, get rid of that member on the vehicle and carry it? So a lot of design work goes into it, but it ends up looking like a pretty simple project. And I've had students, well, we got 5 students interested, do you have enough work for us? Like, you sit down and get started, you realize how hard it is when I tell you, well, no, you can't do that, you don't have a lathe there, you don't have a mill there, you don't have this shape of metal there. Like, oh, that's a little harder than I thought. So the students, it's a fun exercise where they apply all their engineering tools at Purdue, but with very specific constraints. So we typically build a project vehicle at Purdue, and then we go to Cameroon in May and we build a sister vehicle in May. So what this slide shows you is, on the upper left is the vehicle that we built here based on that design. That's actually Ryan Prater, a football player at Purdue, was on the team that year. So he brought his Purdue helmet. And the story behind that is taxis are at a premium there. There's always room for another person in Africa in a taxi. And so we had 9 people in the taxi, 2 in the trunk that I don't remember hearing about until afterwards. And Ryan was one of the ones in the front. Well, you can imagine if you got 4 people across the front seat, one of them's an offensive lineman from Purdue. It's a tight space. And, but if you look at it, you see our vehicle on the left and the vehicle on the right in Cameroon. Very similar, a little different on wood structures, but we're able to kind of replicate it. So we want to build a vehicle here so we can debug it, get it working. The students understand the construction techniques, then we go there and work with our partners. And Jim is driving the new one on there. So we did an improved one in 2012. That's really the first prototype. So we've been working on it every year. You can see the names or the different majors, added civil, electrical, ME. Again, good numbers, lower cost. And this one actually had reverse. And it had suspension on all 3 wheels and automotive brakes on all 3 wheels. And so it was much more capable. We lowered the cost because as we were building there, we learned more and more what we could bring back and do differently. The fun part on this one is the design work stayed the same, but we can now add easily attachments. And so you saw in the video clip, the 2 lower left pictures, sorry they're small if they're in the back. We have 2 pulleys on the engine. One pulley goes down to the transmission to move the vehicle, and the other pulley we just lift up, slide a belt over. We can power water pumps, we can power generators, we got a corn grinder. We're working on a multi-grain thresher project because the engine on that $1,200 vehicle is about $500 to $600. Expensive, but if I can reuse the engine for multiple things, now they can make money many different ways with the vehicle, and the return on investment becomes much more attractive. So some of our newer work is how do we get attachments, and so this was really the platform we got excited about. It's really lightweight. The vehicle weighs about 1,100 pounds, carries 2,000 pounds on there. And we did a lot of testing on it. This picture here is what I wanted to draw the link. So the fun part in 2012, we got on the ground, and we typically get these little minibus taxis to get us pretty close to the village where we stay. But the roads progressively get worse until you're down on a trail. Well, it rained, and about 1.5 miles from our guest house, there's a long hill, and when it rains on that red kind of clay, it's like ice skating. It's not quite as bad as our winters, but relative to what they're used to in the tropics, it's that kind of slip. So they couldn't get the vehicle up there and it was getting pretty potholed, so they basically just told, unload your luggage and get out of the vehicle here, we can't go any further. So they called and they actually got the pup from 2011 and brought it down and got us. That's the next day actually hauling the rest of our suitcases. We can see the students and all the suitcases, but why is that cool? That was the first year the students from the 2012 team went back, and what the vehicle had built the year before with the student team, they actually used to pick us up after surviving the full year of use in Cameroon. And then the students are like, we're part of something bigger here. This is pretty cool where this is going. So that was kind of fun. Tyler Bremer is sitting on the front, the green shirt, mechanical engineering student. You can see him building the new one in there. And all the same size angle iron. So this entire vehicle uses the same size angle iron. They only need one parts list. It's all welding. A lot of the stuff we do with the hacksaw. So the students get some pretty practical construction techniques. Again, a lot of analyzation on there. And we talked about the ag mechanization and adding some value on the processing. So where are we at now? We really kept the same vehicle, but we're optimizing it. Some other fun stories. There's a big, in May, it's their national day. It's like our 4th of July. What do we do on 4th of July here? We have parades. Well, they have parades there too. I would say their parades are more colorful than our parades. It's quite fun. All the school kids go. There's a lot of music. But they actually ran our vehicles in the parade through the community. And so our students got to jump on with our local partners on the ground and actually participate in the parade in the pub vehicles. And we had a huge crowd afterwards. And what are you guys doing? What are you up to? And so the students, again, got kind of a neat experience. You can see the student team. So this is actually the 2013 vehicle we're in front of in the parade because it was in the middle of the trip. We're running the 2012 vehicle after it had been on the ground for a full year. So we're making good progress. But what we're working on now is can we make it so they can make 4 or 5 of them at a time in a microfactory. And the fun part is the NGO in Cameroon just has an order for 4 vehicles from a cocoa plantation and the National Forest Service to buy vehicles. So our goal is to get it to where they can be making the vehicles, which they can now, sell the vehicles and have a sustainable micro business in that part of Cameroon. And then we got interest from other countries as well. And if I sound tired, it's because it's in engineering trying to figure out how to do scale up in marketing. I'm learning. We just recruited some students from Cranert. We're making progress. So 2014 was our last trip in May. And we ended up having to do some repairs on 2012 and 13, just simple welding. In a couple of cases, it was buying new tires because if you got 3 running vehicles, you really only need 1 or 2. If the tires go flat, you just start borrowing from the other vehicle and they kept them running. But by the time we left, we had 3 operating vehicles, the 2012 model, 2013 model, and 2014 model, all side by side lined up, all in operating condition, which is a milestone for something to last that long and get used the way it is. So I had 21 students, 8 traveled with me. That was just last May. And where are we at now? Hopefully you're all peaked. So this was the end of the year picture, end of the trip picture in May. And you can see the student team there. And we got all 3 vehicles lined up. They all look the same, but there's actually pretty significant differences in manufacturing and how we're building them in Cameroon. So we're learning a lot as we go. It's kind of prototype 1, prototype 2, prototype 3. But we're making good progress. So we've got applications now, and these next 3 slides, it's a little darker, but the reason I put these up there is kind of fun. Just in last 2 weeks, we had a conference call with our partner in Cameroon, and he said, I was just back in Cameroon. Here's some pictures, and he sent us pictures. So these are pictures, some of them as recent as 2 weeks ago, of the vehicles being used in Cameroon right now. So the upper left, they're hauling water up to the guest house. So in the dry season, the local wells dry out. It's about a 5-kilometer thing to go get the water. They'll take the vehicle there, they'll use a water pump to fill up the barrels, and they haul it back up to the village. So that's the upper left picture. The upper right picture, they're filling the water buckets. On the vehicle that doesn't have a water pump, we only have 1 water pump there right now. On the lower left, can anyone see what's in the back of the vehicle or recognize them? What's that? Don't know. Take it. They're what we call improved cooking stoves. So indoor air pollution is a huge problem in Africa because most stuff is still burnt using biomass, basically wood to boil water to make it safe. So the NGO has clean cooking stoves or clay pots that burn it differently, but they need to deliver them to the customers. They just got a large grant from EU or European Union to make it, hopefully it turns out to be the 6,000 to 8,000 range of stoves, and so they're using the vehicles now to deliver the stoves to the different little storefronts and markets. And then the bottom right picture is arson emptying it out with a load of gravel. Some other ones that they're using, changing tires on ones when they broke, hauling it. You can see the water buckets in the back, and one more slide, you can just hauling people around. They got the dolly on there. They're putting, these are bio-sand filters in the upper right, so they're concrete towers with basically layers of sand. They pour water in the top, and then there's an active biological layer that grows, so it basically takes the sediment out of the water and actively or biologically filters the water, makes it safe to drink, and they give those to schools, and they sell them in the storefront. So they're using that to haul those also to the market, and then they're just hauling the grains, and these are actually all charcoal briquettes that they make. I'll show you a picture later where they actually take biochar, compress them into little briquettes that don't smoke, and much better indoor air pollution that they're selling. So they're using them to haul these things for the NGO now. Other projects, how am I doing on time? 2 minutes, okay, I'm right on schedule then. Can't talk any faster. I had a comment after one of my seminars I gave down in Florida. It said, the guy talks so fast I can't believe it, but we managed to follow him. So hopefully that's true here. I get excited about what we're doing, and it's fun to talk about. We have a micro hydroelectric project. We have a turbine on a waterfall that's producing electricity now. So when we go and build the vehicles, we actually are building it with the energy from the waterfall. That's part of another Purdue project that we're working on. So renewable energy, the biomass press, small wind turbines. We worked on biofuels, so we're running the vehicles on some biofuels now. Not enough to run them all, but we're working on a biofuel, trying to make it sustainable. And then we got hand and water powered pump. We're trying to make a locally available water pump that we can attach to it. These are a picture of some of the other products. You can see the 3 tubes in the middle are the tubes running down the hill to the micro hydro turbine. So the hydroelectric turbine is in the powerhouse down here. These take the water from the top of the waterfall. The black things are the charcoal briquettes, which are also powered from the waterfall on a press to actually press those together for charcoal briquettes. So they're trying to run the whole center off of renewable energy. We have a new project just started where it's a micro hydro wind solar combination power station for the NGO that we're working with too. We have to do our own laundry, which is in the upper left corner. So the students, they laugh for a while, and then they come, this is how you do it. They come and they show us how to actually do laundry by hand, because that's a lost art here. They're remarkably effective at doing it. And so they get a laugh out of the American students trying to learn how to do laundry. Lower left is the guest house. You can see the windows in the upper right, solar dryer. And then my wife's been with me a couple times, and she just loves holding babies like most people do. So, and the future. So the microfactories I talked about, renewable energy, we're working on an electric vehicle so we could charge it from the hydroelectric plant and actually then run it off of electric. It's not cost effective yet anywhere near in Africa. It's very expensive to get batteries and motors, but something that's future proof. So as the prices come down, we can look at importing stuff from China and build those vehicles there. We're looking at, can we train people to do it from a distance using apps? More and more smartphones are in Africa. Or can we get a website so they can actually follow the steps and build the vehicles by themselves? Because there's not a model for me to keep sending student teams to all these different places that want to build vehicles and doing it only as a student team. I don't have the time. It's a difficult thing to do. But how can we scale up by doing that? So those are the things we're looking at. We're always looking for funding and partnerships. We just had a call with Uganda. We had a call with Nigeria. We got interest in Haiti. We got interest in Kenya and Tanzania to do these projects. And so the demand is out there. People are finding out. But now it's like, how do I move from a student project as undergrads to somehow scaling up? And I still don't know the answer, but that's the journey we're on. So we're having fun doing that. Couple last slides. Just want to, Purdue Global Engineering Program, our department, Office of Engagements helped us. John Deere Foundation has helped us, SolidWorks. So we've got a lot of people chip in and are willing to help us, which makes it go. We primarily run on small grants. Have a website up, and there's a couple other slides if there's questions, but I'd rather just leave a couple minutes for questions and that. And again, thank you for the time to talk.
You think there might be some places in this country that could use a vehicle like that?
We've had people actually ask us, some small farmers, and some of my kids that have built the vehicle are from farms, the Ag Systems Management. They've gone back and they built it for their own farm for a utility vehicle, because if you looked at the price of a utility vehicle, it's like a car. I'd love to have one, but I need a car more than I need a utility vehicle. So actually, we'll use these out at the house. I don't know if you saw the one picture where it spun in, you saw a whole load of firewood going by in it when we were testing it. That was out at my house because I got 2 things accomplished. We tested the vehicle and the students loaded and unloaded the firewood and got where I wanted it to go. It's like, good deal.
How many horsepower is the engine on there?
Good question. It's a really generic, any engine we can get in any country. Ours is set up right now with about a 10 horsepower. Anywhere between 6 and 13 would be plenty. It's geared down, so it hauls like 2,000 pounds, but it only goes 20 miles an hour, which between the road condition there and being a three-wheel vehicle, which does tip more if you start going at high speeds, that's about right. You know, but the fact of the matter is, even if you had a four-wheel drive pickup truck, the way they load it, you can't go more than 20 miles an hour on most of the roads anyways. Yes?
Do you do any type of driver training?
We do try to do driver training. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. There's stories behind that, but we are working on changing the clutch mechanism because we use a clutch belt like lawnmowers would do here. We can beat it all the time here. Our belts in rural King, where we get them, are a lot better than the belts they get that are imported from Nigeria, and they tend to break. But if someone slips the clutch at all on there, but the only time one of these has flipped, and that's what I was asking if I should tell these stories before, was Mumani, one of the technicians there, during driver training with some students standing up in the back, which there was a lot of negatives about all that together, was going downhill, pushing the clutch so he could go even faster downhill due to gravity. And what the engine wanted to do, and decided at the bottom of the hill, well, we should take this road instead of going straight, did a quick right turn, and luckily it just threw people off into the grasses on the side. And I was not on site at that point, and those are where I say my prayers and fix things so they don't happen again. Because a lot of it, I tell the students, if we get hurt once, you don't want to get hurt there, and we'll never do this trip again. So we have all safety gear. We've learned, we bring that with us. We bring a whole box of safety glasses and make them wear their shoes. And so, but it's hard to keep track of every minute of their time at students. That was the one time we had something, I'm like, oh, boy.
Let's take one more question.
Your axles and wheels and transmissions come from every place also?
Yeah, right now we're doing it at one of, so we'll walk through all the little storefronts, and their car part stores are basically, you take a car that no longer runs and they part it out and then they hang it up in their little 4-foot wide shop, and then you go buy the parts. So the parts that we use are coil springs, manual transmission, and a rear axle, which don't wear out. So when the car gets junked, there's usually enough of those, so since they're left over in the country, they're really cheap. We can buy a rear-wheel drive transmission for $70. And then we put it together with that. Coil springs are all over the place, and so we buy basically the parts that don't wear out. We can test them before we buy them, but we buy them all in country. Everything that we don't bring anything with us anymore, other than food and candy and yeah. So I don't know if there's one more question we can.
Yeah. How are the student expenses covered?
Very good question. So the nutshell is it's a shared expense. So we get grants to cover some. If the students write enough grants and get covered on all of them, then they get offset. But I don't mind the students paying some. The students kick in anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 each towards their own trip, plus shots and visas. So all said and done, $1,200 to $1,800. It's kind of like a study abroad program, but then they get 3 credits for their. And then, like our department kicks in $500 per student out of the engineering differential fees. Global engineering will help. There's small. So we've been able to write enough grants to make it manageable for the students. So the students invest all their time, they volunteer in the school year, but then they do pay something on the trip, and so the numbers are a little lower because of that, but to have a little foot in the game, you know, is fine too. So I like to find a balance where, and I tell the student, if it's absolutely not affordable for them, I don't want that to be a reason. So I have one young lady right now that really has wanted to go. She's been on the team for 3 years, so I have some other money that I'm able to employ her in my lab and pay her as an assistant to my grad students, and then put that money. So I will work with students to I don't want the money to be a reason that they can't go do this. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, John. Let's give him a hand. Well, actually, I've got a technologically appropriate gift for John. This is what you get for your presentation here. So you take that to Cameroon.
We do bring a lot of flashlights and headlamps, yes.